organizes black and white people around. If the council ain't doing right, here, that was talking about, here's an issue, man. There's your enemy. Make him worse than what he is, and then after you get there, you can settle and do the part, work it out. Or, I mean, if that's the issue you want to go after, or pick some issue. Get the people off of minds off each other. Boom, boom, there you go. That's what's pressing you, bang, bang. Rally and keep them telling that. Don't let them have time, what are we doing together, but what are we, and small things. There it is, man, there it is.
Yeah, the council can't be used now for that because we're on the inside of the council. We're going to use the council for something else.
Okay,
but if they hadn't yielded, they would have been the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's the way we were moving. But I was up with Steve in West Virginia, and one miner there, and sitting there watching these train loads of coal going out, and later on we got discussing things and people talking about their problems and so on. And this miner says, here we've been discussing for an hour or two about how we can get food for our children in the schools. We don't have any way to feed them. They can go to school. And here's all this millions of dollars of coal going by here, going out of this state. He said there ought to be some way, that the money represented by that coal could be used to feed these hungry kids. Now he had hold of a pretty profound truth there, you see, the people are beginning to try to think. But tell more about that group, Steve. I think this is a good example of how we're trying to find what Buck is talking about.
Yeah. I think that group is good to look at because it's kind of an illustration of what's happened all over, especially with a lot of the War on Poverty projects, the OEO projects, which were mainly the kind of projects where people came into the region from outside or else from kind of better, more upper class of people to work with poorer people. What happened up there was that there were a number of people who had spent a lot of time with and gotten a group of people, local poor people, together to work around various projects and ideas that they had decided. These people from the outside had decided. In those particular, a whole lot of meetings were held, but the meetings were always run by some reverend of the Presbyterian Church or somebody who come from outside the community. And so that as far as running the meetings went and setting them up and people deciding things for themselves, it was almost all done from the outside. I talked to one person up there, a man by the name of Alex Cabell, who was an ex-coal miner and just a common, ordinary working man. He's now I think he's on Social Security. But he was interested in seeing that some of the problems in the community were solved, but he kind of always looked for people from the outside to solve his problems for him. He's always going to rely on the Southern Mountain Project, which one of the people, the fellow you talked about that wrote that book about Southern people you keep referring to, was part of that. Yeah, he's part of that crowd. They always look to them. So I talked to him, and he recognized the problem. He saw that as soon as those people left, they'd come in, then the whole organization would fall apart. That was his feeling about it. He thought that everybody was, including himself, was really relying too much on those people to do their business for them. So after we'd talked for a while, he, saw where it'd probably be a good idea if he'd go about running a meeting, which he did, and he'd knew a lot of people on Camp Creek. He'd been going over there, and so he got a group of people from Camp Creek together. It was a pretty broad range of the community. There were some, working people there. There were people at, coal mines or cut timber, or some people were on welfare, some on Social Security. I think there were a couple of, young people there and some older people. So it was a, pretty broad kind of group. But the main thing about that group was that it was Alex himself who ran it. He was the one, who got people together and got people talking, so that he'd, so that if after a while, conversation dragged or people didn't know what to talk about, he'd ask them, what they were thinking about at that particular time. The thing was that this was the first time in that situation that anybody from that community, that area, had the experience of running a meeting themselves and getting people, their own people, talking about their problems and working on their problems. And it looks like, at this point that's going to happen, increasingly, there and other places. But it's another situation where people, actually began to get together on their own without anybody, telling them what to do or what they should be talking about. And that's always seemed to be the situation up there. There's always somebody telling people they ought to be, talking about President Nixon's welfare program, or they ought to be talking about, some kind of economic development. It was always somebody telling people what to do. And people for the first time began to get together and define things on their own and decide on their own what they wanted to do.
Well, that's what we're about. We're really trying to dig down and get down in the basement and start over again. But people, however slow, whatever they want to do, doing what they want to do without people interfering. That doesn't mean that we think there's any, kind of magic in just mechanically, just getting people together and that something happens because they're sitting there. They got to want to do something. For example, it wouldn't do any good if all the so-called experts, outsiders, decided it would be good for the poor people to meet by themselves, and they said, we're going to get out so you can meet by yourself. Well, that's just another paternalistic top-down thing, you see. But when the poor people themselves decide that they want to meet by themselves, and if they don't want these other people around, that they're going to have to, they got enough confidence in themselves that they trust themselves to do something, then that's what we're talking about, it's something more than just getting people together. It really is people getting together to take over. That's what we're really talking about, and thinking that they have enough, a similar responsibility for their own lives and doing what Irene says, the experience she had, getting the self-respect and knowing she is as good as these other people and a hell of a lot more informed and concerned than they were, so we don't have too much respect for these other people. So it's got to come from the people themselves. Now, we think that if we get enough of these groups going around and start having them distant from one another and getting acquainted, that we may be, and we may be working on a sound enough foundation that something will grow out of it. And then what Buck's talking about will be a result of this. They'll find the enemy. They'll find, what it is they're about. And I agree with you that they got to do that. That's got to be done, but we don't think we do that for them.
Absolutely.
They got to find out what that enemy is and how to fight that enemy. And then people like us have to say, okay, you tell us what we can do, if anything.
No, I didn't mean that we, find that kind of enemy from, but that's what I was.
You're right, it's what we have to have.
But I think that, through education, and this type of education.
Self-education.
That's the education I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, the education I referred to a while ago wouldn't work. So, new type of education in the United States has got to come about. I think we found that education in Uptown, and just exactly what you're saying. Even though it's just one little spot on the map like a pinhead, what you're seeing has happened there, and we didn't give a damn because who didn't like it, because one of the damnedest fights you ever seen in Uptown grew right out of us. But when it settled, man, we had one of the worst internal fights right in Varsity people. You remember that, Irene? And people didn't even come to that meeting. Almost had to carry a Hawk Bill knife to keep me and Irene and John Purcell and those guys apart, because we'd ready to whoop each other. But what growed out of this, we'd been so long tied up under the system of things that we had to get out of our system. We've just come to life, and it's a brand new thing. They're like a bunch of kids fighting, in the house. And where Daddy's got 8, 9 kids, But we got in there, and she said, "You a damn liar, ain't that way?" And I said, "You another, And pretty soon we said, "Well, maybe you're right on that point." Then we got our thing, and then we told other people, "Here, now you do your thing."
And your enemy, the fact that you're fighting together against a common enemy, united people, you forget about these little differences among yourselves, because they're not important in relation to the big differences all of you have with the enemy.
I think a fight, though, amongst yourself in the beginning, it's the most beautiful.
Well, you got to get rid. You got to get to work.
It's the most beautiful thing that ever happened, man. That made me stronger than anything they could have done to me on the outside anywhere, because we wasn't actually fighting.
Yes.
We was fighting for existence that we never had, and we didn't know who to fight. But we seemed we was all together there after a while, and it put courage and spirit into us. And then when we went for the real enemy, we had got our training right in from amongst our own groups, and we had allies. What I guess about the allies of Normandy? We were there. We were there.
Well, I want to really apologize for starting out with kind of about Highlander first. But the only reason I did, as I explained, is I thought that was the least important thing we're going to be doing here, and I wanted to save you people for hopefully some of the people who come in from other places. But now and the only reason I want you to kind of bear in mind, what we're trying to do, and see if there's any way you can figure out how you can help us, or criticize it,
or utilize that power that were to be effective.
Yeah. Was that Evan or somebody came in?
Mike.
Going back to the Bucks thing that he raised a while ago about the identity. Last fall, just before the election, some of us went down to a Wallace rally in Chicago. And we sat, this was before the Patriots was actually formed. We sat with the peaceniks, under a peace symbol and all this. And when they played the the Star Spangled Banner, and introduced Wallace, we booed and hissed. And what happened is a bunch of young guys from the audience, they just come storming up at us, just ready to fight, So one of these guys walked right beside me, and I put my arm around the cat, and I said, "Wait a minute, you meet the same kind of people." And he shoved me, and I shoved him back. And he looked at me, and then he looked around, and he seen this little tiny hippie cat, and he started to beat up on this hippie cat. And it turned into a near riot, So I was thinking, first of all, I was scared to death,
I'm always scared too.
But then I got to thinking that actually I was a lot closer to that cat that was doing the pounding than I was to the cat that was sitting there and taking it, And that started me thinking, well, George Wallace, what he represents a guy who understands, who's using the outward symbols of the South, the veneer of the Southern man and woman, for his own ideas, for his own ends, and he's distorting the actual nature of human beings in what he's doing. See, and he's not the only man from the South that understands Southern culture. There's a million people that understand Southern culture, and the South has a strong tradition of socialism, of democracy, And there's no reason why you can't take the outward symbols of the South, and under those symbols, run down socialism, run down democracy, fight against racism, and there's no reason why Wallace should be allowed, to be the only cat really representing the things the outward symbols of the South. That's why we took on the rebel flag, because we figured, the cats in Uptown, they relate to it, they see it, and they want it. When we run a leaflet, we always run the rebel flag line. when they see that, they want to read it. They do read it. And then inside the leaflet, we run down all kinds of stuff that they aren't used to hearing about, you know. See, and I think that's important.
Well, I don't think you can leave anybody out of this thing just because of their background. You think they're prejudiced, or you think they're. I remember we used to have trouble, and when we were working with labor unions trying to fight through this thing. Somebody'd come in and find a Klansman at house. The guy'd say, "I remember the Klan." They call me, "Did you know the Klansman here?" I said, "Yeah, I brought him here, invited him here." "Well, you know, you can work with that kind of people." I said, "He's a Southerner, he lives here, he's a working man, and sure, I'm gonna work with him." Or they say, "Shh, he's a communist here, you know." You know, I said, "Well, if he's a worker, you know, I don't care what he is. He might be a Klansman or a communist. These are people. They are poor people, they're working people, and you start with people where they are." You know, we don't want to leave anybody out of this thing. And you're right about Wallace. Wallace, you see, we should be dealing with the same people Wallace is dealing with, and we haven't learned how to do it.
I think it's more just to truth than what I'm about to say, but it's a good thing what you're saying about, you know, working with the Klan and whoever else. I was reading in I think Life magazine, you know, they had a comical strip in there, and this one black man, you know, in the days past, so these fellas might not, younger fellas might not know me, you know, Miles, about how the Klans never revealed each other to each other, even, you know, today I think they do, but
This would be a secret.
and they had somebody that had been found out who it was, and this is when they started revealing themselves to each other after a while. They found out that one of the leaders down in Alabama that had been all this time had been leading them against a lot of black people and beating them there, was a black man. It was the Ku Klux Klan. And the reason he done that, you know, as a leader, he wasn't going to get hurt himself, you know, and he was protecting his own self, you know, and he's leading a bunch of white men when they like had a shock of their life, and all of them dispersed after they unhooded themselves and become integrated in that direction. But it was just a comic strip. But that's all. They become integrated because he'd been leading them all the time. You know?
Julio, you know, we've been talking like a bunch of white Appalachians or black and white Appalachians and so on. So you represent a kind of a new addition to this thing, and don't you got to get into this business because we've been talking about things that as if, you know, is this all this Appalachian people in Chicago and
I don't know, the Spanish goes together, the blacks and white, you know, the Spanish. Just take time, because, you know, people don't understand. Maybe, you know, about like Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Ecuador, you know, different Spanish people. Bad, you know. Sometimes I go someplace, maybe go together, people, also.
Why don't you tell me this thing you was telling me about? It was very interesting to me how the Cuban people are, a lot of them, because they can't, you know, afraid they're going to get kicked out of the country because the FBI is always down on them, you know, if they start mixing that. And that's a hang that the government has over their head if they start. Why don't you tell me about that, you know, thing you were talking about?
You know, sometimes the people come from the Cuba, the FBI, you know, sometimes investigation for this, you know, why they do it. Because I'm a lot of us people in Cuba. Maybe you go to welfare, you know, there's something money, food, you know, go on the me walking, even part the welfare, the FBI investigation in the Cuba people. But do it. That's
they got a whip over their heads, all right.
Like a typical one was Manny Vasquez in Chicago. Did you know Manny? Well, anyway, he's a Pan American Club, a Spanish club in Uptown. He sat on Mala City's council, and a couple times he started voting for things, programs that we want to get through and everything. So a few days, Manny didn't show up for the council meeting and nothing else. And so very good friend of his, Father Tom Malaya, got next to him, and he found out the reason why. Now, Father Malaya made a sacred promise to him till Manny moved away. They wouldn't tell us, but after Manny was done and gone, what he told us, that some of the staff in the city of Chicago, model city staff, I wouldn't want to mention his name, but his initials been given to Walter Smith, and told him that if he voted that way anymore, just the way he done with Catherine Samita and things like that, you know, that he was going to turn him into FBI because he knew, as a matter of fact, he was in this country illegally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they do.
So Manny moved clean out of the country on here, I guess, for this type of things. That's very hard to Spanish people, like I said, unless it is young large and there's, you know, a few of them that don't give a damn. You know, the freedom comes out of the end of the gun barrel.
They need us, but we need them to as bad as they need us. They gotta work this thing out.
Over Lopez, he has gone the court 3 or 4 times. Since the public one, you know, it goes maybe go messing, go back. So that's true.
And that's why I really respect a lot of the young lords, because they just don't feel like, you know, if they keep living freedom, they ain't got a damn thing to live for, and they go out whole hog, man. You know, I really respect some of those cats. Hell with it. It says either live or die. What the hell we got to lose? I think Cha Cha was one of the greatest organizers ever there. Of his people.
Why don't you talk some more about some of the other groups of things you've seen happen, Steve?
I think, well, there's one community in Kentucky that is worth looking at, and that is, well, what happened there was that a lot of people had spent a lot of time there. A lot of people, like I'd been there a lot, and Mike had been there, and a lot of people had spent time there, you know, trying to get people together, trying to, you know, organize people, or trying to get people to do something that we thought they ought to be doing, you know, whether it was organizing a welfare rights group or trying to fight strip mining. In any case, what we always did was suggest to those people what they ought to be doing, and you know, it was pretty unsuccessful. You know, once in a while, you know, we'd be able to get a few people together, but it was never for a very long period of time. People just wouldn't hold up their interest too long. Probably one of the last things that happened in there was kind of everything came to a head when that particular community was given a professional organizer by an OEO group. You know, he was sent there to go in there and organize that community, and that's pretty much, you know, what he tried to do. You know, he tried to go in and organize that community with it, without too much regard for what people thought or said. And naturally, people are pretty independent, and they reacted pretty strong to, you know, to that approach. And so the guy was, well, he got shot at for one thing, and generally just kind of run out of the community because people said they didn't want him telling them what to do, you know, and messing up their lives. Well, that's just kind of the background. What's happened in the wake of that is that after this outside influence is gone, a group of people have come together who are, you know, all from that community, who are all, you know, poor and working people, and they come together and they've been meeting over a period of the last 2 or 3 months every week, just talking about their problems all in their own. The meetings are run very democratically, you know, so that when one guy in the community who's been in the habit of really running the group, running the meeting, tries to do that, and tries to tell, the other people in his group what to do, they say, well, wait a minute, Jim, we're not, we want to, get our ideas in this, or we got something to say on that, or, we got something else that we think is important, so that everybody gets a chance to participate in that group. Everybody goes away from those meetings feeling like they were an important part of that group, and that they, had something important to say, so that they keep coming back over a long period of time. They've been meeting for the last 2 or 3 months, and there's no sign that they're going to quit. They really get something positive from it. That's just another example, of what people are doing when they get together on their own. And, begin to get a feeling that they're an important part of things, that they got to say in what's going on.
I don't know if silence is a goal. Another theory in school.
Well, I think a lot of people, could do a lot of thinking. High has managed somehow to do something a lot of Vista workers never were able to do. To relate to poor people instead of other Vista workers or AVs. And I was impressed, that his whole relationship there was with the people. Somehow he managed to get in and get accepted. When it was obvious after 15 minutes there that he was not part of a group of AVs or Vistas or somebody that gnawed on each other's innards all the time, but was related to the to the people. And I know you have some Vista workers there, that just stay Vistas and they live with each other. How come? How did he must have had some kind of
that program
help or something that got him into this thing?
Yeah, well, I think it could have been all along. That program. See, there's a number of applications turned in from the neighborhood, like his was, and a lot of our people in the organization just tell one neighborhood business because that's something that we sitting around the table last night talking about. It ought to be all neighborhood people, as far as I'm concerned, in Vista, instead of a lot of bourgeois motherfuckers across the country. And you might object to that language, very get used to it because you won't see the films a lot of it is. But that's just what they are to us, and we don't figure that's a cuss word anymore because there's a relation that maybe we go into it later on, but I won't dig into that now. But what he doing, Bobby McGinnis and a lot of others, what brought this about, you filed on a regular national Vista application, didn't you, Hannah?
No, I specified on there that I wanted to be committed.
Right, but it was on the regular national Vista application. You see, there's a separate one that comes since you were instrumental in breaking the ground for neighborhood Vistas. And I wanted to find the difference in the applications that's come out, so that maybe you don't know this.
Yeah, I know about it.
Okay, but you were partly cause of that, and a lot of others that applied. There was about 6 or 7 people all together in the neighborhood when you applied for Neighborhood Vista. Through the pressure that was being put on, maybe it wasn't open and peer pressure, but letters and talk and yap, tell them we want Neighborhood Vista. Maybe they thought they would pacify us by giving us one, see. Well, that's openers. It takes jacks to open sometimes. And he was the jack in this case. But through everyday talk, and I met with, what's the guy come out of Washington that was up there the other day? What's his name? Anyway, guy keeps coming from Washington. He said, "You think the neighborhood people go hold up this?" I said, "I can't understand what you say. Hold it up. They've lived here in this crap and shit all the time. You know, here's some people that come along with an education that's out of this world. Don't need to be in Vista. And I've trained a lot of Vistas in Uptown to come out there. And the first thing I tell them, you know, when they come into our neighborhood, and I'm sure Andy and others told as we start coming in their training, and I understand they're all going to be starting being trained on the site now everywhere instead of just training off and sent to different places. The things you cats can do to get neighborhood vistas more and more, they come in that training and tell them, this is our neighborhood. You ain't coming in here, you're tearing up our with your bourgeoisie and same middle class life. What'd you come here for? To get out of the draft or what? That's what you come here for. Go back to your own neighborhood. You know, just make it damn hard on them. But they don't want to stay. Reject half of them if you're the trainer. You know, since they are going to start being, because this new issue is going to start doing from the national fund. But that's the type of thing that started going on in Uptown. And every group I trained, I'd discourage the hell out of them, scare the hell out of them, tell them that was cutthroats and people being blackjacked and every night. Remember the big old red beard guy that we had in Uptown? I rejected him and I told him, go back to New York. Daddy's a lawyer, very wealthy. And I told him about how many people cut up, and then, you know, I let them know, the ones I trained. As far as I'm concerned, you're on 24-hour duty, you know, in our neighborhood. You're just like joining the army, you know, if you go in, that's what it's about. This ain't never off from work. You using my tax money and all this kind of. I'd always call them out after meeting, then after we got through, you know. One cat said, I ain't gonna paint. I told him, go home, man, I don't want him, you know. Do the same neighborhood people. Neighborhood people do it. They do it without cost, you know, no money at all. This type of thing. Make it damn hot on that, and then you begin to tell this kind of thing. That them cats ain't worth a dime, you know, get blisters on their hands too easy. Pretty soon that this kind of thing started happening. And I had lived around that neighborhood all his life. I mean, not all his life, all the time he'd been in Chicago, lived in that neighborhood, you know. And we're already working with people, so he's a perfect image of Vista Volunteer.
See, like we had to make a lot of threats too, or I did. You know, like I waited like 8-9 months before I was even accepted. And, you know, I called them up at the regional, and they'd keep putting me off, so I just got tired of it, and I called up Washington. This guy named Kennedy was the head of it. And I told him, I said, look, you know, we're in a citywide coalition here, and all these organizations that are in it take vistas. And I said, if there's not some community people, you know, being accepted into it, and all these other organizations are going to quit taking vistas, you know. And they had to use force just to get one community person in there, you know, because like people are really giving vistas a hard time now, the whole Vista project and the whole war on poverty thing, and like they're really wanting to set up these things now because they got another grant, like it was 4.78 billion or something like that, just to fund community projects and to hire community people. And like I was telling them last night, you know, I don't see any reason why they couldn't get community people in Vista. And one thing about the community Vista is there's no rules tied to it. You know, you just get in, you go back doing your own job.
Buck, you got a perfect example of what you were saying over there where you are. You're talking about all these vistas want to organize people, you know. Man, you got a natural enemy there, man.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
can
we
just
found that out.
imply to the people, these people trying to take your role, man. They're taking your money. You can be making a living off of it and organize your own community. They'll be beating the hell out of them. They'll want to leave in a hurry.
I think there's another aspect to it that ain't been brought out. See, in the Patriots, for instance, I would say we have about a dozen young people now that are working for us basically full time. Some of them do, say, gig during the daytime, but then they come at night and things like this. What happens now, a cat will put up for this for a while, working, doing a lot of work for us, and that's what we're asking now. If he wants to be part of the Patriots, he's got to work. We've got programs going that take up a lot of time and energy. So he'll do that for a while, but sooner or later he gets tired of not having any money, and he says, "I'm sorry, I got to go take a job." A lot of our guys, because they don't want to get out of the neighborhood, they'll take jobs in the neighborhood for $1.99. That's no bullshit. In Chicago, $1.99. Okay. Now, what we're saying is that these people are already doing an infinitely better job of what Vista was set out for than any of the Vistas we've ever had. And for them not to be getting paid for it, that is random. And if we don't start to get some money into the Patriots, out of Vista, out of these kind of federal government subsidies, there ain't going to be no more Vistas in our neighborhood. I mean, either we're going to get our cut of it, and that's going to be a major cut of it. This goes for the coalition, we're laying this out as our own position right now. There ain't going to be no Vistas because we won't have them.
And already we've got, we just turned in, two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more neighborhood, and they even printed some regular applications that said Neighborhood Community Vista. That's the newest project. It's a trial project right there in Uptown. Due to what just happened, so some people I can run down, and even Washington, it'll be better paid than regular Vista too, by the way. It'll be about $40 a week plus $5 dependent, and they'll pay their rent and free insurance and stuff.
And a medical program for kids.
And a medical program for kids.
I understand they got one mother now with 8 kids.
Is this just like a pilot project in Chicago, or is this?
Yeah, right now the pilot project is trial research because this kind of hell has been raised, but I'm sure it's going to spread throughout the nation.
Yeah.
Now, we got 5 people we do. Irene's applied.
Yeah.
Old as she is. But young as Mary Ellen is, and his wife. 14-year-old Brad, his nephew. She's applied, and she's one of the 5, and she's one of them. And Orrin Williams, the black guy there, that's very much one. He's applied.
Yeah.
My wife has applied.
Yeah.
Now, there's reason behind. We want to see when we mix different kind to see just what comes out of that. The other one is Bobby Joe. So there's 2 out of the Patriots.
Cal?
And Cal's out of the Patriots too. So actually, there's 6 altogether. I'm sorry. There's
What
6.
you really spelling out here is saying it, instead of having vistas as it's been thought of now, people come in from the outside, huddle together for bodily warmth, and relate to each other because they feel comfortable that way. You're getting people that already relate to the community and feel comfortable relating to the community. They're already in the community, doing what the government pays them to do what they'd be doing anyway.
Right.
Now this makes a terrific lot of sense. If
One of the other things I wanted to add.
the government finds out what that really means.
One of the other things I want to add. This is something I've been doing on my own for as I could do, and like guys like the Hull House. We don't have to worry too much. He'll work with us. We kind of, work with him already. It took a long time, but we got in there. Like the Threshold and people that sponsor visitors. I've been going to them and tell them, look, I want to use Threshold for an example. One of the hardest ones I'm going through right now. The Stevenson guy, this new director up there, I told him, you're in our community and you're a community agency. And he said, oh no, but I'm not a community agency. And I said, what the hell are you doing in the community then if you're not a community agency? I'll run this way I want. I said, no, you won't. I said, I don't care damn who you fund about. If you're going to stay in our community, what we said, we want you as a sponsor. Now a sponsor, if he don't want a Vista, all he's got to do is say, I'm not going to sponsor this Vista.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to start rejecting these guys. And every one they send, I don't want him.
But back to what you're saying is the fact that you're thinking in terms of community control of everything in that community.
Absolutely.
And you're saying anybody comes in that community with a Vista or anybody,
Student
the community controls them.
Absolutely.
And this is a kind of a new idea, you see. You got enough strength there to pull it off. That may be I don't know, I was trying to think through the situation in Appalachia is that, of course, and the reason people can come in and do a lot of damage is that there's no sense of community control of the people who come in.
Right on.
And these people can never relate to the community because it's difficult for them to relate to. They're really rejected, so they're forced back into their own groups, to carry on their college bull sessions in a postgraduate way, and they never have a chance really. I'm not saying it's critical. I'm saying it's the only world in which they're allowed to live because the community doesn't have any device for absorbing them and forcing them to relate to the community. Now he's talking about community control, but the community says, you're no longer related to this other kind of thing. You relate to us directly. And that's the thing I sensed in High when I was there. That Vista, hell, he wasn't a Vista in the sense I know that he's a community person who got his money from Vista. Now this is a whole different concept, but you have to have the idea of community control, to make what you said stick. You see, this idea in some way that.
Spread that around.
Yeah,
but it's another aspect you got to look at to get people started. Now I don't know how I ought to be aware of this and what it was not. You remember the gang they call the Little Sharks up there? This is just an example now. And I know you remember Jimmy Osborne that worked for George Moore, and he's a very good friend of mine from the state of Virginia. And me and him and some red-headed guy that just hanging around there, and another guy. Got tired of the way the Little Sharks was stealing batteries out of our cars and breaking our basement windows, in the back house where I live and that. But we didn't have a large enough group to whoop 18 or 20 boys that, are kicking the rest of the neighborhood kids' ass and beating up women, snatching their purse and what. So what we done, we got on my back porch and we used to sit out there and sometimes drink a little beer and what. And me and Jimmy Osborne and Big Red, they call him, and one night we seen two of them going through the alley, and we had this idea that might have worked, and we got our heads together and we sneaked around back the shed and we grabbed these little hotshot teenager boys that sniff glue and smoke pot and that. Boy, we just slapped holy hell out of them, and we kind of pulled our hats down. We had some old felt hats. And we told them, "We're from the rebels. You take that to your leader." Then we went out and got us some paint, and we painted on every garage. Get out, Little Sharks, the rebels are here. And everywhere you can find in the alleys and uptown, the Little Sharks disappeared, And so this might, that's what went in Little Sharks. Alex and his gang. Now, Alex belongs to another gang now, but the Sharks disappeared anyway. And rebels were rolled out of the window, such damn thing as rebels, but they thought there was a damn everywhere they went. Just two of them got slapped around. You might create community organization in somebody, I'm not telling you, that's in some community, might accidentally grab one of these vistas and don't hurt them, just smack their jaw. And we're going to start writing the community people don't want you.
Yeah, the reason I raise this question is that our staff is made up of people who are trying to find a way to work another way, and I'm almost scared to some Vista workers came here the other day talking to me, and I was almost scared to let the staff people come in because I'm afraid they feel so strongly about all this bad stuff. I thought they probably would want to talk to them. But actually, Steve talking to this guy, he found there's a way to work things out, and I'm thinking of how you can use money and people the way we want to do it, and not have them interfere with the way we want to do it. And that's why I kind of latched on this community, this community control idea.
I think you missed what I was
Fit
saying.
them right into this damn thing, and there ain't no way to get out.
Part I was saying though, all one person has to do is start running after a fire engine before you know it. There's 100 people following the fire engine down the street. Now, only one time it takes to scare one guy up and then writing a bunch of stuff in any place. But our community people don't want vistas and they leak out. Some of them community people slap hell out of one of our vistas. Community people next time do it themselves.
See, that's what we did once, like these visitors just wouldn't relate to us. So we went to a party once and was told the party, you know, and we said, now relate to us, you know, because that's what community people are. And most of them left, but some of them stayed and they related.
Get with us.
Right.
Get out of your bag and get in ours.
And sometimes that's just the way you have to play.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to do that kind of thing. We just telling you how we do it.
We listen.
Well, I think things like this depend on, you know, different communities. You get a different feeling in each different kind of community. One idea will just fit right in a certain
Yeah.
place, but it wouldn't go over in another place. So, you know, there's several different ways to really think about it. It's good.
Well, you see
As long as you keep the same
Yeah.
goal.
we've got to reverse this business, you know, actually, our people here in Appalachia have been so missionaried and helped and done things for that they almost, you know, somebody comes in and they say, yes, mister, you know, and it makes people feel mighty important. Makes unimportant people feel important. And, you know, we've got to kind of try to find a way to, you know, change this around. And it's got to be a pretty drastic switch for some of these people who've been trained for a couple of 100 years almost, and you know, letting somebody else, tolerating somebody else, even though they don't pay much attention to them. And if somehow people could get the feeling if they got a right to tell people to get out of their community, it would not only solve the problem having people always in there interfering, but it would also build the strength of the confidence of the people. The place where they get a little sense of their own pride and dignity and self-respect, where they begin to say, you know, this is our community, and we just can't come in our community like we, you know, and use this. We going to use you, or you going to get out. If that would, that works both ways. You see,
Right.
keep people out that should be out, but it also, the thing I'm more interested in is it builds the kind of community unity and some kind of strength in the community, some self-respect in the community. It's that we got to find. But, you know, this is what we got to do. Because, you know, there are few people that have this sense. But you couldn't say that there's any community I know of in Appalachia that this is our community. We're going to decide, you know, who comes in. There are individuals who will do it. You know, you do it, or a lot of other people I know do it personally, but I'm talking about a community doing it, or a neighborhood doing it, or a holler doing it.
Well, let's turn back to community organization. I think, you know, I hear people talking about TWO, and I hear, you know, it seems like everybody's familiar with TWO here, you know, in one respect or another. And I hear them holler, you know, Lawndale People's Action and Planning, and most of them know very little about the Uptown Coalition, but it's not been in existence that long, even though that you know we're there, you know. But there's a long line of history on it. And there's 4 major organizations in Chicago, and small town we've been around, we're considered one of the big 4, and that's even what Daley's calling us, the 4 major community organizations. And I've related to every one of these guys and sat down and talked that where they really break down and be honest with me, that's the heads of these organizations, you know. And one thing that I think everybody's got to understand, and I know at the first the discouragement that come, and it like to eat me up because I didn't see all the people I wanted to see out there. And like I said, knocking on doors and everything. Community organization is like this, and I found it to be a matter of fact that everywhere I've investigated into that, you don't know real people. Talking about real people, I'm not talking about the agencies and things like that would get you. I'm talking about just real folks down there, like in Appalachia or country like talking. That the way that you organize anything, or I found that that's what everyone told me, that all of the work in any organization is going to be done until something really happens by 4 or 5 people. The people will say that with you. And I've had thousands and thousands of them right there in Uptown. And we have a meeting on their street, you know. Over on Clifton, for instance, Irene. Now, this is a matter of fact. They'll pour out like mad. and do their own thing right there on their block, and they'll talk and they'll raise hell in a meeting. When you go over to the model cities meeting, or somewhere where the real work to be done, there's only that same faithful few that wants to attack that. Until something really big happens that really concerns them, that's where your organization gets made. I've started out so many times and seen this happen 2 or 3 times. Andy, you and Bobby Joe and Marilyn said down, you know. Now, as soon as you get that medical clinic, for instance, for going, you're doing something for them that they can get involved. See, it's a rallying point. You can tell me all day long, and I've searched. If you can find some other places different, then I want to know it. But until those 5 or 6, 8 people, 10, whatever it might be, develop something that really interests those people and gets down and works their head off day and night to do it. There's still neighborhood people I'm talking about. Just like the village, for instance, they rally around. Just like the pantry, you know, that come up. You've got nothing to offer for people. You know, people are going to sit there. They're going to sit there and they're going to talk about community control now. Before that, just added, maybe the village, you know, might not ever be built, but it gives people respect to say that they were planning something. People were running in and up, out of uptown, back to Tennessee, back to Kentucky. You done 2 or 3 times yourself, you know, back. And I used to do it. Everybody. Port of entry. But soon as they got set down and they just had a little old square piece of paper, that was just an example of what it was. You begin to see them get down on their hands and knees, hey, you know, my house over here, and they begin to crawl around on the floor, you know. I like a tree here. They became to say, that's part of my plan, and then they begin to go out to the model cities meeting. Ain't nobody going to take my land away from me. You see? Yeah. This is still ain't got it. It's just a piece of paper you're talking about. But it's something they felt like they belonged, that they planned, and it was indeed theirs. Yeah. And that's how you know. Same thing happened to TWO. 2 men, in case you, we know it's called a Woodlawn organization, you know. But really where the TWO comes in was 2 men that started that. Bob Squires and an Irish fellow, black and white fellow. That's why they combined TWO and put it everywhere, and still Woodlawn organization, you know, on the W. Yeah. But it was Bob Squires, an Irish fella, that started down 63rd Street, and they started in looking at the prices on food. They organized around economics, you know, food, what it was. Got a pound of hamburger out of one chain store and went out in a bourgeois neighborhood and got a pound that cost the same price, the same kind of store. Fried it. Watch all the grease and water come out of the hamburger, you know, that was out there in that poor black neighborhood. One to come out, they paid the same price for it in a very rich white neighborhood, had good meat there. Well, they showed this to about 10 people. It was facts, you know. Here all, they went out and got them out in the neighborhood. Look here what we found here. Them 10 people, what the hell, man? Let's go down there. They begin to take off. They started down 63rd Street and telling people about a piece of hamburger. When they ended up down by Cottage Grove, man, you couldn't stop the people down there. And everywhere you can look now, today, along 63rd Street, you can look in the window. TWO is on the window. We support TWO. We pay our dues or donate to TWO, whatever you want to say, you know. This is one thing. It's something to organize.
Yeah, but you see, the key to what you're saying is that they've been demonstrations of hamburgers by federal government agencies and social workers and everything else.
Right.
It's because local people themselves did that people listen.
Absolutely.
And that's the key to it. And that's why outside organizers, you know, always miss it because they never get that kind of response. They wonder why people don't respond. Nobody pays any attention. What you're saying is you got to get the people themselves to do it. And when they start doing it, 2s, 4s, things start rolling.
But never, I'm against starting big. I'm really, and that's my personal feel, because I've seen all these others.
Yeah.
Let 6 or 8 people in that community do it. Because where they can all get involved just like we're talking here. Now, we had 1,000 people out here. We couldn't all get involved.
Nobody take it personally.
But, you know, go into a community or something, get 4 or 5 people and put into their head, don't you do, you know, hey you, why don't you go down there and get a pound of hamburger? That's just for an example. Or anything might be the issue.
But they do it.
And get something that you can take it to people and say, look, did you know this is happening over there? Yeah. And then they'll say, give me that hamburger, and then you're out of sight. Yeah. See, they go to show to you one. Community control, same thing.
I really
We
believe
can only
it.
work this thing out somewhere in Appalachia. Take a holler. What would happen, Steve? It's a holler. One holler. Where people know each other, fight, get drunk, and go to church together, all things people do. That's one, kind of little holler. And get these people together in a small group and start talking about some of these things. Well, if you can get one holler that says, this is our holler, and you got to have identification to get in. We got to know you. When we're going to tell you what to do. You just might start something. People got a sense of strength there.
I'm not sure that people are all that far away, they need to, move to that position. I think people are more and more.
Coming to that realization.
Yeah.
I think the kind of complete turnover in my way of looking at things is a relatively new experience for the average human being. And I think it's part of just the whole ongoing thing of life. Because for several years, Urban Reno was chasing me all over the north side. I started out with 5 kids. 2 of them are married now, another one just about grown up. And walk up one street and down the other, and I just look at all the buildings. And I used to think, somewhere in one of these buildings that some landlord owns or some real estate agency owns, there's an apartment. Somewhere in one of them, there's an apartment that's for me and my kids. And it'll be big enough, and it'll be in good shape, and it'll be the right rent, and the landlord will keep it up. He won't let it fall apart because there's just an old, one woman there with a bunch of kids. And he can mess over her all he wants. Somewhere there's got to be one. And it was always a feeling, that somewhere there's a somebody or there's a group of somebody that's gonna have this place for me. If I just keep looking, I'll find it. And then when I get dumped down in Uptown and everything goes wrong, and the war on poverty just messed over more people, than it even pretended to help. And all of a sudden a whole changeover, took place. And I got to where nobody could tell me anymore that my life wasn't valid, and most of all, that my kids' lives wasn't valid. It's like the female of the species, You threaten my young, and that's it. And I just became real primitive. And what came out of that was no more thinking somewhere there's a landlord or somewhere there's an agency. This land is mine. This money is my tax money. And from now on, I'm going to find out how to say what goes. I'm going to plan what community I'm going to live in. This is my community. It belongs to me. And, just trying to, this feeling just is building up and spreading to other people because it's a really basic, human, primitive feeling. You go all the way back to the lion in its den, or the mother guarding her cubs. And I guess we just had to get to that bad situation before we could begin to turn over into the kind of thing where, this is ours. And you don't any longer go to a meeting and sit there and listen to somebody's phony promises, You go there with the intent in mind of saying, as far as this particular plan over here in this corner, this is what my neighbors and I are saying. It's going to go there, and how it's going to be done. And I think it's all really relatively new, but I think that it just might apply to anywhere in the world. But it's a whole changeover in looking at things, where you just look around wherever you are, and it's a bunch of trees and a little piece of land. That's mine.
Yeah. So you didn't have any real self-respect before.
No.
You were just a thing being pushed around by buildings and abstract landlords and things, and you became a person. You said, I'm somebody, and I ain't gonna take this anymore. You became alive as a person.
And I think this is really, what maybe was supposed to happen out of the beginnings of this country, with democracy and all. And it just got all aborted because all through history, it had never been like that. So now we got other ideas that developed, like in Russia and Cuba and everywhere. But that's there, and that's all Russian. Yeah. Or in Cuba, it's all Cubans, or in China, it's all Chinese. When you come to the United States, everybody's here, and then you've really got a great big pill to swallow. But it's not going to choke you. But I think you have to see it that way. It's a lot more complex, trying to figure out how we're all gonna live together, and really all have a chance to be a human being.
I don't know if it's gonna relate to you guys down here or not very much, but we have a hell of a housing problem in Chicago. One of the issues. And in the small cities you have here, you know, in Appalachian country, I don't know, maybe that's something you have to look into, but a lot of people, you know, get put out of their houses, you know, for different causes, different reasons. But if you'll find maybe where there's like an alley or something where there's 2 buildings already, to give them a perfect example, you ain't going to take that if you get a bunch of people together after you do get them together. If you notice where there's a wall on each side. You know, this has been done already in the city of Chicago, and some people got some new housing built from on the south side. What they done during the night, they got a bunch of men out, and they guarded the outside. That's where they see the pigs coming in, you know, or if they did come, they just blocked them all the great big rally. They had some guys could lay concrete blocks. So if you'll notice, you already got 2 walls, one on each side. If you get some guys to lay concrete blocks real fast, it wouldn't take long to put up a wall across this way and a wall across that way. Sure to throw you some boards on and 2 walls and a roof, and you got a house. Move a family in there, and man, it's going to take them a long time to tear it down, especially if there's a lot of people out there, and they're going to, you know, every time that they start throwing some people out of houses or tearing their house down for urban renewal, like, well, they done this on the south side, they'd throw up another and cross an alley somewhere. That's costing the city a lot of money clearing all that out, you know. You say, well, where did they get the materials? Well, there were some construction sites being closed down here a while back, and there's some guys with put on white construction helmets right along, and while there's out there, and one instance, this happened on our side right there. I think I told you that. I don't want to go into who it was, but guy walked up there, and there's a whole load of plasterboard being brought in there while some demonstrations going on. This guy, the hard helmet on, the truck driver, thought he was part of the construction outfit there, and he walked up to the truck driver. What do you got here, pal? And he said, a load of plasterboard. I'll sign for it. Take it over to said and said address. We're not going to use it. This address, Robert Kochinoff, and nobody still don't know where that load of plasterboard is. It's materials. You know, kind of materials you can use. Thousands of ways, Jack, man, can, you know, tackle these. The beautiful thing about it, it didn't come out of a history book, you know. It didn't come out of a trigonometry book or something. It come out of people, poor people's and uneducated people's minds that are being messed over by the present form of government that we're under the situation is today.
What time is it getting to be?
10 after 1.
Oh, sorry. Maybe we better kind of take a little relaxation. What are we going to do that singing, Steve? We're going to have these gospels.
Yeah, can I bring it, sir?
Yeah.
Fine.
Steve came back singing gospel songs. He's going to have some gospel singing here. Anybody else get tips in?
When?
You know what that means?
Yes.
I guess it's about that.
Come have a seat in the circle, charm circle. I just wanted Scott to be big serious if we can hold him.
Is he?
No, we tried to get him. I know that's something to be good for you guys.
It was really great for what?
Now he was. I heard one of the students at the moratorium. He was walking along. He says, you know, he says, he's the smartest professor in this hill. He says, he made all A's all through college.
That's the
And he says, they think, you know, because he's against the war and but he makes fun of all these politicians and cracks all these jokes. You know, I don't like him, but he's smart and all the rest of them put together.
Gotta give him that much. What's he teach?
He teaches, what's that, English literature or something like that.
History, isn't it? In the history department. I thought he was history.
I guess in history, yeah. And he's written a book on one. He's written a historic novel, which I haven't read yet. He said, you'll recognize a lot of the places, maybe some of the people, and, you know, by name, by description. I won't be sure Chuck is in here.
The local history.
It's Tennessee, it's Middle Tennessee. I think down around Franklin and Oak Ridge, he's changed the places up. Like when that's Oak Ridge history. And let's step back 50 years, 100 years, something like this.
How you want to
Is he
share back
coming
over?
over today?
We tried to get him because I thought it was good. And I wanted to see this film. I thought we might get him to promote it at the university.
You can't come to him.
I'm kind of still trying to get him.
You don't have to, I just realized that I'm taking away your seat.
No.
Well, what I thought we should do this afternoon, start with, is to get a good report on the young patriots and what some of the problems they're dealing with, and discuss that for a while so we got a good understanding of that, and then we could go into a general discussion after that. And I think let's kind of, if you don't mind, just kind of stick to that until we begin to get a clear picture of it. But it's something that's very exciting and new, and I think very significant. Hi, yes.
You started.
Hammett, you know, you look good.
Andy's been working with a lot more than I have. I've been working with coalition this time.
Why don't you start off there, and then I can, if you were down at the beginning.
Well, I think the thing that I don't know where to start because I just woke up and put my head back together. The latest thing that we've had to face up to, which is taking a lot of thinking on our part, is this whole matter of, I think in relation to what's going on down here, is the whole question of being a national organization as opposed to what we started out as an organization of young guys and girls in Uptown. And we've been traveling around the country for the best part of the time we've been in existence, just talking to various people, mostly fundraising, picking up a little bit of money to live on, but also meeting some other young people who were inclined to some of the same ideas that we are. And in the past couple months, we've had a lot of pressure from the Black Panthers and from people inclined to the same ideas as the Black Panthers to become a nationwide organization. And we met with people from all over the country, and we went through it. We decided that we didn't have enough people because we were trying to undertake some extensive programs in Uptown. We didn't have enough people to take on the coordination that we saw that we would want to do for a national organization. And what I mean by that is, SDS, for instance, is a national organization, but they don't coordinate. As far as I'm concerned, they have really no coordination between their different people throughout the country. They don't focus the work. They don't set out directions. They're not a very, very well disciplined or well led organization, and we wouldn't want to jump into a national thing like that. On the other hand, the Panthers have a pretty tightly disciplined national structure run out of Oakland, where the staff in Oakland sets out the direction of the work. People all over the country take this direction and implement that. communication is very tight, weekly reports and so forth, and constant communication on the telephone, a lot of traveling. And we decided we couldn't handle that in terms of the people we had. And a lot of people got really angry inside our own organization, saying that if we didn't go national, that we were more or less letting down white people across the country. And we've had a lot of thinking and talking to do about this. And the position we're at right now is that we're going to do our work in Uptown until it's clear that the ideas we're laying out are successful in terms of organizing white people. Till, like Irene said, I don't think she intended this, until we have more or less control over Uptown. And we mean that. We've said for a long time that the government in this country is useless. It's irrelevant to the people. It's so much bullshit. And people know this. Everywhere in this country that you talk to poor and working people, they think the same thing, that the government is so much trash. You know, it doesn't affect their lives except in ways that's mostly unpleasant and uncomfortable. And they don't even care to relate to it, but just not caring to relate to it, that's half of the answer. Because the power of government is a power that naturally belongs to the people. This is laid out in the revolutionary thinking of the founders of this country. It's laid out in the revolutionary thinking of Marx and Lenin, Mao Zedong and Che Guevara. And the power of government is the power of the people. So what we've said from the beginning is that we intend to assume the functions of the government. That's why we undertook in Uptown to a food supplement program. More or less like what you're doing, except we didn't have any government backing on it. We just saw that there were a lot of people in Uptown that didn't get enough to eat. And it was a function of government, in other words, a function of the people to provide this food. So we undertook that. For a period of about 6 or 7 months, we've been providing food supplements, I would say, between 50 and 75 families a week. Now, it's not adequate. We operate on a budget of, roughly $100 a week. But it is some kind of food supplement, and the people see it that way. And we don't ask any questions. We don't demand proof that these people, proof that their husband is not working on the sly, or they're not getting some money someplace. The fact is they need food. And that's all they have to say to us. We need it. It's yours. That's why we undertook a free breakfast program. Because, like the Panthers laid it out, a kid who goes to school hungry is a kid who goes to school not prepared to learn, That's why we're undertaking now to provide medical care for the people in Uptown. Because a person who's sick, and I know this for myself, that we operate on a budget, maybe, my wife and I, maybe 125 a week, something like that. We take the rent out of that, the groceries and so forth. It's not enough money to be able to go to a doctor. It's too much money to be on welfare or anything like that. And this is true throughout Uptown. I'm sure it's true throughout Appalachia, that the people don't have access to proper medical care. It's a function of government. It's a function of the people. We took it on. We're going to provide, we're just starting this today, the program's going on right now, I imagine, free medical care. We have a group of medical students. We have a small number of doctors, a small number of dentists that are going to relate to the people. Now, we can't guarantee free service, but what we can guarantee, is attention. It's attention to the problems. And as this program develops, and people will hopefully back us up more and more, especially with a little bit of money. Maybe it will be free, we don't know. So in other words, what we say is that we're for real. Government in this country is a bullshit thing. It doesn't serve the people, and that's the only necessary and proper function for a government to take on. Therefore, the government in this country has to go down. If people want to cut it down, they just got to go about it, and there's nothing symbolic about that. It's a real thing, and that's the way we go about it. Where the government doesn't function, we jump in and see what we can do to satisfy that need of the people. That goes to the thing of police. There have been a lot of times in a neighborhood where a hassle come up in a neighborhood. And the police, we know how they relate. All they care to do with us is just throw us in jail. So a couple times in the neighborhood, we've gone and taken on the function of police, settling problems between the people. We don't believe in symbolic revolution. Symbolic revolution is just putting off the question. The question is the nature and the source of power in this country. The source of power in this country right now is pretty corrupt, pretty bass backwards, and the only legitimate source of power is the people. That's the program that we're trying to implement. You know, that's about all.
Tell us a little about how the organization is set up, the membership organization. How did you get started, and what kind of organization and structure?
Well, I was saying last night to Buck, when we started out, we were nothing but more or less a social group. A bunch of guys from the neighborhood, and we had some political ideas, but that wasn't the basis for our organization. The basis was a bunch of young guys closer to a club than a political organization. When we first started, the main thing we did was party, you know, and back each other up. If one of us got busted, all of us went down and bonded this cat out, you know, and showed the pigs that we weren't afraid of, you know, that we were going to defend our people. Now, as time went on, we met the Panthers. We decided it was important to lay out to the people in our community some of our actual political ideas. And this is when we started to undertake the food program. And when we saw as much work as we put into that food program, how little it actually did in terms of solving the problems in that neighborhood, we realized that we had to we had to get heavier. We had to undertake more and more work. And that's the funny thing, man. The longer we go on, the more people we involve, the more things we do for the community, the harder all of us have to work. And that's something that we're just beginning to realize. Because we figured, you know, in the beginning, well, if you did a little something, probably it'd make it a little bit easier. It makes it a little bit harder. Everything you do makes it that much harder. It requires that much more effort on your part. Now, the structure of the organization, as we have it now, we have a general meeting Sunday evenings, at which people can raise any questions they have, lay out their ideas, discuss things. We have a central committee, which, based on those meetings, is in charge of setting down the direction of the work and the priority of the work. In other words, from the opinion of the entire membership, laying out the specific policy. In addition to the central committee, we have a central staff, which is all the people who are key to the various work programs we have.
How many people is there involved in your program? One way or another?
Well, that's a very difficult thing to say, because if you take the people that are actually working, you know, that maintains a pretty low number. Sometimes that maybe gets up as high as a dozen people that are actively working for the Patriots. Now, if you take the people that relate at certain times, that backed us up in certain instances, young people in the neighborhood, and even some older people in the neighborhood, I would say the number goes as high as 50 or 75. If you take the people from all over the country that have indicated they want to work with us, well, the number, you know, creeps up into the probably better than 100. But as I said, we're not ready to take on the leadership of these people throughout the country, and we don't want our name being used in a loose program. We don't want a tightly run thing.
You know, later on we probably will go national or something. You have to have a base in the community before you can start anywhere else.
How do you go about recruiting membership for the Patriots? Or do you see that expanding? Are you trying to expand it right now?
We've never actively recruited. You know, when we meet somebody new that indicates they're interested, well, we try to, you know, go out of our way to deal with this person, run down our ideas. But one thing we found out in the past few months is that just having a lot of people, you know, in the neighborhood who claim to be young patriots, that doesn't mean all that much. What we got to have now, people that are willing to do work for us, are willing to follow the rules of the organization, follow, you know, whatever work is set out to be done, that these people are willing to jump in and do it. And that's a hard thing to get, you know, in a neighborhood like Uptown. But more and more guys are slowly coming into it, and that's all we expect. You know, slowly the guys will see. In fact, this happened in the past couple of weeks. I know since we laid out this medical program, and since it became clear that we were for real about it, a lot of guys from the neighborhood have come around and said, you know, I wasn't sure about you guys, but I'm getting to see that what you do is for real, you know, and I dig what you're doing. You're really helping the neighborhood, you know, and I'm going to try to relate to you more in the future.
And then you have those meetings on Sunday, generally, can anybody come to them, or just the really active people, or just anybody?
Well, that varies from time to time. Basically, anybody can come. We're a little bit worried right now because we have the opinion based on some information that we're being watched closely by the CIA, and we're not sure how to deal with this. I mean, in other words, we know that some people are trying to infiltrate young patriots. We're very worried about this. You know, in fact, you know, it's people starting to get jumpy about it. Certain people have come in before, like liberal people from the neighborhood, come in and not so much intending to disrupt our meetings, but in fact that's what they do. So sometimes we run some people out of our meetings, but basically they're open to whoever wants to come.
Is this an outgrowth of Join?
It's all very different from Join.
How is it different?
See, Join had a lot of students in it. We don't, you know, there's students in ours. They're community people. You know, it's really serious about the community.
Has a bunch of SDS bourgeois mothers that didn't belong in the neighborhood, trying to move neighborhood people. That's basically what it was.
What's the difference on in the stated program?
There's all difference in the world. These guys about political change in SDS was typo, and I think I stayed just talking about come into the damn neighborhood that never want to finish and just stir trouble up and lead people. And, I'm sorry I cut in like that, but I've dealt close with them. I have even before you guys were around. I get very mad at them. I told them about a story, you know, Miles when I was telling you about the building, where they'd fix up something and then go around and persuade if they didn't get to keep it and get to rule, why they'd tear up anything they'd done. And another thing they'd do, like go around and one of the biggest sore points in Uptown yet today, and it's yet being talked about in every direction. A bunch of these rich kids, middle-class kids that was out of Berkeley, and then they'd come in and they'd get like 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old girls and take them up their apartments and get them to smoke pot and all drunk and crap and that, and then turn all the neighborhood people off, you know. And every time they'd go out and have a meeting, well, that's what it turned into after the pot party or a drunk party or something. And parents didn't go for that, and they turned everybody off, see, in the neighborhood. And so finally, that's what happened to them. They told them to get their ashes out. They wanted to put up with it, you know. That's what it was. There's a few neighborhood people in it that wanted to do something, like Bobby Joe and June Bud and myself. A few of those people that really want to do something, but every time that we'd start to step forward, they was the boss. They'd push down and said, "Stop! You know, you ain't gonna do it. We're the one. We started this." You know, and that's really bullshit. So,
See, and like if the community people would start something, they'd figure out some way of taking it over. You know, like this one thing called National Community Union, which a lot of the community people made the rules and everything to it, and then they took it over. And the students took it over and turned it into NOC, the National Organizing Committee. And NOC is no longer in Uptown. None of them are because we told them to get out.
Do you have any kind of take these people that come in and you look, you say they want to help. Well, they might not have any kind of political philosophy. They're good people that want to see something good being done and they want to line up. How do you go about? Do you have any way of talking to people about what you believe, why you're doing these things? Have any kind of educational or other kinds of? How do you go about that? Say somebody could try to come in and I'm just a good guy and you trust me and I want to work, but I just want to help people and don't understand these things. How do you go about that kind of situation?
Well, I laid out this book right here, quotations from Chairman Murphy too. It's a theoretical basis for a lot of our work. Now, we don't be running down the streets waving this book in people's faces. When a guy comes in and wants to work for us, a lot of our educations have been based on things in here. It's a beautiful book. It deals directly with the problems of organizing people. And, now, we did get some flack a couple times about, well, how come we're studying this guy when he was from China, you know? So we happened to have our Minister of Defense spent 3 years in Vietnam, did a lot of study on his own of Oriental culture. So he set up an education on his own, running down why we do study Mao. And a lot of the guys, you know, sat up and said, yeah, that really makes sense. You know, that makes sense. We don't, you know, we're not try not to be crazy about this stuff, but it is the basis of our work. It's the basis of our ideas. And if a guy can't handle these ideas, then he just, in the long run, you know, more or less, I don't think he'll be able to relate to us. Now, as far as doing work in the neighborhood, you know, it becomes pretty clear. I mean, we run down the need for the programs is clear. The need for a food supplement, the need for a breakfast program, the need for health care. You know, that's clear, and our job is to tie that up with the basis of socialism as opposed to the basis of capitalism. And we haven't had that much trouble in doing it. You know, nobody is that. Like I was saying about Wallace, once you stop being something frightful to the working and the poor people, and you become part of them, become real to them, it's clear, you know, on the basis of your personal relationship, that you're for real and you're not a threat to them, then they can easily accept your ideas if your ideas make sense. And we believe very much that the ideas of Marxism and Leninism make sense. We believe very much that capitalism is a decadent system and it's not going to be in the future the basis for the government in this country.
And it was said because, you know, there was people like, you know, maybe they couldn't read all of it, but, you know, wanted to really have some, you know, grim idea about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Just some sort of, you know, education, you know, that way that you have sort of besides the reading material.
Well, actually, all our educationals. Now, a lot of our guys have trouble reading. I would say about half the people we work with have low reading skills. You know, some of them just about none. The guys that can read, this they do. And it's their job to put that back to the people that can't. And not only that, but them guys that can't read, we bug them all the time about. We got a tutor for a couple of our guys that said, look, you can't read, you know, and you're never going to be what you could be as long as you can't read. We told them point blank, you're going to learn to read, you're going to learn to write. Because until you do, you know, you're not what you could be to us. You're not what you could be to the people. And they agreed to it. They said, you know, well, I always have wanted to read and write anyhow. I've just been scared of the schools, you know, this and that. You know, a person who can't read and write, that's not his own choice. You know, that's something that was put on him by a really bad educational system. And it's up to us to just force our way through that. And it's a problem for us. It's a very bad problem, but I think we're doing a pretty good deal with it. Education, I would say, is our hardest problem. It's easier to run a free medical clinic than it is to get some education, but everybody realizes that more and more as time goes by, and we spend more and more time working on education.
Just one point I want to clear up while we had that. While on most things that the rest of the coalition and Patriots agree on, like food program things, we definitely don't agree on the MA book. The rest of the coalition, but yet that don't stop us from working with the Patriots and being in the coalition. The other 14 organizations are, maybe there might be a few of them. The rest of them believe in their MA book being worked out of their heads. So that forces people. My book is King James Version Bible. I use that. That's what I believe in. To me, and I'm not saying it's wrong, you know, because it's a democratic process in the coalition. Every man has his own way of how he wants to run each. I'll start to tell you why everybody's here. Why he told you how the Young Patriots set up. Now let me tell you how the coalition is set up, so you can understand more what I'm saying here. The coalition was set up that where there are 15 organizations, while all of them not as active as should be and working on the same things. Each one of them has a person that they choose as their own delegate
to form a Congress of people, all 15 organizations of people. Patriots have got one delegate, and they'll sit down and have a meeting with him, and he's a spokesman for them that will attend primarily every Monday night. We have a meeting for the delegates and the officers of the coalition that's voted in, year over year. This past year, I've been the president. Next year, maybe somebody else, vote in or whoever, But each one of those delegates from each organization run their own thing and do their own thing. Decide for themselves, what kind of structure their organization is set up on, as long as it's working in behalf of poor people and for the benefit of poor people. Like they're set up on one way, the voice of the people has got a different way. We openly, every meeting night, we don't care if it's a pig comes in, because we got something for him to know. Master Pig wants to come in, he can hear what we got to say. It's just a more open thing, because we're going to tell him right there that was the rules of the voice of people. We've had pigs sitting in our meetings, and we let them know right where to stand. And anybody wants to come, we don't care if they're Red Spy or FBI, whatever. That's the voice of people. And another, like a beautification club, they're hardly doing anything except planting grass, keeping the wall clean. Again, he that's with you is not against you. And someday he's going to come on a little further, so he's there. Others know it, less know it, but as long as they're there. And each organization does its own thing. Lucille Lundman got a little family service center. She's handling kids, art and crafts, But she's doing her thing, but still she's with us. She's not against us. All different kinds of poor folks made up like that. They got a tendency to fight for the rights of people being thrown out. Their buildings and that, War days, welfare recipients demand action. Some black people used to be enjoined that they didn't like how they got kicked around to the SBS student deal, so they dug their own thing, and become a welfare rights organization. They're in it. All these people make up a Congress, and like I said that maybe we don't dig their book, but we do dig them, the things they're doing, see. As far as the clinic and the other programs in the neighborhood.
Chuck, you told us earlier how this Uptown Coalition was tied in with the other coalitions, and so you were part of kind of a citywide thing. Let me get back to the Panthers here. The Patriots here. Do you have your own relationship with other, say the Young Lords, or some other younger groups there? What kind of how does that work outside the coalition? Like your relationship with the Panthers or the Young Lords, for example. What kind of contacts do you have there, and how does it work?
Well, in the past, main work with the Panthers has been theoretical. It's been showing ourselves, for instance, at press conferences, at various places, showing ourselves with the Panthers and saying we are aligned in the same position with these Black Panthers, and we are white people working with poor white people. And we haven't, well, we did work with the Panthers on the food program. We helped them to pick up some food. They gave us some contacts where we could get food for our pantry. Unfortunately, they're about half the city away from us in their actual neighborhood, so it's hard to coordinate.
Yeah.
Now, the Young Lords we've actually been a lot closer to. We backed up the Lords a lot of times. See, the Lords were a street gang before they became a political organization, and they're a heavy bunch of guys. They used to be one of the baddest gangs in Chicago. Cha-Cha somehow got it into his head that instead of hurting the people, he should serve the people. And now they're a really beautiful thing. And they're just about 20 blocks away from us or something like that. So a lot of times the Lords will say, we're having a march. We'll send a lot of our guys down there. I got busted with the Lords one time, and we're very tight with the Lords. And that's more or less been the nature of the relationship so far. What we're working on now is to set up, take 2 people from the Panthers, 2 from the Lords, and 2 from the Patriots, set up an office called the Rainbow Foods. And this will be an office that solicits contributions of food and money to back up the Panthers breakfast program, to back up our community pantry, our breakfast program, to back up the Young Lords daycare center. So that's about how that works. Another thing is that we've all, been experimenting with opening up that coalition to different groups in the city. And we more or less decided for the time being that it's a closed coalition. That a lot of gangs in Chicago are starting to turn political. And we're open to talking with these people, but we're not going to let anybody into that coalition until it's clear that their goal is to serve the people, and they're not into gang bopping and a lot of things that they have. And this goes for SDS. Certain people were working closely with SDS, and we said that we couldn't accept that, and we wanted a clarification. It was clarified. SDS is not part of that coalition.
Had any reactionary gangs after you guys?
No, we haven't had that trouble, and I'm just so glad that we haven't. We don't have a real heavy gang structure up in Uptown. The Panthers have had a lot of trouble, and we still do, because Chicago's probably the heaviest gang city in this